Most people think gladiators were just entertainment, men who fought and died for a crowd and left nothing behind. They left something behind. They left bloodlines. And those bloodlines, carried forward through 2,000 years of Italian, Spanish, and North African ancestry, are still present in modern surnames that millions of people carry today without any idea what those names are pointing at. Let me start by destroying the most common misconception about gladiators. They were not Romans. The overwhelming majority of gladiators were not Roman citizens. They were slaves, prisoners of war, and condemned criminals drawn from every corner of the Roman world. Gauls from what is now France, Germans from beyond the Rhine, Thracians from what is now Bulgaria, Africans from Numidia, Syrians, Greeks, Britons, Jews. The Roman amphitheater was one of the most ethnically diverse spaces in the ancient world. Not because Rome valued diversity, but because Rome conquered constantly and its prisoners ended up in the arena. This matters enormously for the surname question, because the bloodlines gladiators left behind were not Roman bloodlines. They were the bloodlines of every people Rome ever conquered, and those bloodlines mixed. In the gladiator schools, in the cities where fighters lived between bouts, in the families of freed gladiators who survived long enough to earn their freedom. With the Italian population in ways still genetically measurable today, the first surname sounds completely Italian. What it is actually pointing at will surprise you. Arena, an Italian and Spanish surname carried by thousands of families across Southern Europe and Latin America. Sounds geographical, like a family that lived near sand or open ground. It is not geographical. It is gladiatorial. The Latin word arena meant sand. Specifically, the sand spread across the floor of the Roman amphitheater to absorb blood during gladiatorial combat. Fresh sand was laid before every event and raked between bouts to remove evidence of what had just happened on it. A family named Arena in medieval Italian records was almost certainly connected to the amphitheater, either living near an old Roman arena, Italy is full of them, or descended from families embedded in the enormous economic ecosystem surrounding gladiatorial performance. The Roman amphitheater was not simply a sports venue. It was the center of a vast economy. Trainers, doctors, weapon makers, animal handlers, ticket sellers, food vendors, groundskeepers. All of these people lived near the arena, worked near it, and in many cases took their family identifiers from proximity to it. The surname coming next has a meaning that leaves absolutely no room for interpretation. The Latin word gladius meant sword, specifically the short, double-edged stabbing sword used by Roman legionaries and certain classes of arena fighter. The gladiator in Latin, was literally the sword man, the person defined entirely by their relationship to the gladius. Their legal status, their market value, and their survival all built around their ability to use one effectively in front of 40,000 people. The Italian surname Gladio, and its regional variants across southern Italy and Sicily, derives directly from this root. A family named Gladio in medieval Italian records is carrying a direct linguistic descendant of the word that named the gladiator himself. After the formal games ended with the fall of the Western Roman Empire in 476 CE, the gladiatorial tradition persisted in modified forms for at least another century. Gladiatorial-style combat appears in Byzantine records into the 6th century. The families who carried gladiatorial occupational identifiers into the post-Roman period were connected to this persistent tradition. Trainers, former fighters who had earned their freedom, and descendants who inherited both the surname and the cultural identity it represented. If your surname is Gladio or any regional Italian variant connecting to the gladius root, Your family name is a direct linguistic descendant of the most famous fighting tradition in the ancient world. The surname coming next is carried by millions across the Mediterranean, and almost none of them know what it originally described. Victor sounds like a simple name, a name meaning winner. In the Roman gladiatorial context, victor was not a general statement of optimism. It was a specific technical designation. A victor in the arena was a gladiator who had won his bout, but a gladiator who won enough bouts to earn the crowd's consistent favor became a celebrity, a performer whose name was known across the city, whose image appeared on pottery, on lamps, on graffiti scratched into Roman walls, graffiti at Pompeii, preserved by the volcanic eruption of 79 CE, named specific gladiators whose popularity was so intense that admirers scratched their names into walls the way modern fans write names on desks. These were not anonymous fighters. They were known individuals with names and reputations that outlasted their fighting careers. The Italian surname Vittorio, and its variants Victor in Spanish and Portuguese contexts, carries the Roman victory designation into the medieval and modern period. Families named Vittorio or Victor were carrying a Roman cultural identifier connecting them to the idea of arena victory, whether as direct descendants of gladiatorial families or as families who adopted the identifier because of its powerful Roman cultural associations. The surname coming next appears across 3 continents, and its connection to the gladiatorial world is one most people carrying it have never heard. Moro Moreno, 2 of the most common surnames across Italy, Spain, Portugal, and Latin America, sounding like a straightforward color reference. Dark, swarthy complexion. The color reference is real, but the history behind it goes much deeper. In the Roman gladiatorial system, fighters from North Africa, from Numidia, Mauritania, and Africa Proconsularis were among the most prized performers. The Moorish fighters, Romans called them Mauri, giving us the root of Moro and Moreno, were specifically noted for their speed, agility, and unconventional fighting styles that contrasted sharply with heavily armored European fighters. When Roman sources describe a Moorish fighter in the arena, they are describing someone from the North African provinces who brought fighting techniques Roman audiences had never seen before, effective enough to make these fighters valuable enough to transport across the Mediterranean as premium entertainment. The medieval Italian and Spanish surname Moro absorbed the Roman ethnic designation Maurus into its meaning. A family named Moro in medieval records was being identified by their North African appearance or ancestry, and that North African ancestry in the post-Roman Mediterranean world frequently traced back to the same populations that had supplied the Roman arena with some of its most celebrated performers. The North African genetic contribution to Southern Italian and Spanish populations, measurable in modern genetic studies, is real, and it traces, at least in part, to the Roman-era population movements that brought North African fighters into the Italian peninsula. The final surname is the most surprising on this list. It is not Italian, not Spanish, and its connection to the gladiatorial world is one of the most specific here. The Thracian gladiator was one of the most distinctive fighter types in the Roman arena. Thrace, the ancient region covering what is now Bulgaria, northern Greece, and European Turkey, produced warriors Romans considered among the most naturally gifted fighters they had encountered. The Thracian, fought with a curved sword called a sickle, using speed and unpredictable movement rather than brute force. Spartacus, the most famous gladiator in history, who led the largest slave revolt in Roman history from 73 to 71 BCE, was a Thracian. The English surname Travers, and its variant Travers, derives from the Old French traverser, meaning to cross. But in the specific context of Norman French naming conventions, the Travers root was used in administrative records to identify families of Eastern European origin, people who had crossed the boundary between the Eastern and Western worlds, the chain that connects them, Thracian fighter, Thraex classification, post-Roman Thracian population movement into Western Europe, Norman French administrative record using the Travers route for Eastern boundary crosses, is a documented historical sequence. If your surname is Travis or Travers with deep Norman or French roots, there is a specific historical possibility in your ancestry that most family history research would never surface. And it starts in the Thracian hills, where Rome found some of its most feared arena fighters. 2,000 years ago, men from every corner of the ancient world were brought to Rome to fight in the sand. Most of them were forgotten, but their bloodlines were not. The surnames on this list are carrying those bloodlines forward through Italian villages, Spanish cities, and Latin American countries into the present day. You may be one of them. Subscribe. See ya.